Vegas has my heart, man.
It means the world to me. It's my home.
It's everything. It really is.
Las Vegas just has so much opportunity.
This is home. Las Vegas is home, man.
It is a land of opportunity.
Las Vegas has been my home for 20 years now.
You can have a crazy idea in the morning, and by mid-afternoon, you have a bunch of people on your side helping get it done.
Las Vegas is home. Las Vegas is home.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Guest List Podcast. We're here with episode 26 in a brand new studio apartment, guys. Yeah, I had to move, but we now have the backdrop of the Las Vegas Strip. And I'm sitting here with Mr. Leeor Engelstein, who is the owner of Conceal Manufacturing Sector, which is the foldable gun, which you might have seen all over the internet. And he is also the founder of Solvent Traps USA. So what's up, Leeor? How you doing?
Pretty good. Good.
Thank you for coming on. I don't know anything about weapons. And as we were talking before this, I've been kind of on the border as far as Second Amendment rights, but I'm starting to become a little bit more pro Second Amendment because of how much of the chaos the world is in right now.
So let's hit us off politically right off the bat, right? So the way I view the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights as a whole is, this is my background, and what I studied was political science, and I did all that. And what a lot of people don't realize is the Bill of Rights, there's things called positive and negative rights. And nothing to do with positive and nothing to do with negative. It's the way that these rights are given, right? So positive rights are rights that are given to us by the government, right? Okay. Negative rights, which is the Bill of Rights, are rights that the government says are already ours innately, and they're just listed there so that we know that we have them, right? So the government doesn't give us a right to own guns, right? Doesn't give us a right to protect ourselves. That's a right that's already ours.
It seems it gets infringed upon, though, a bunch from outside or external forces.
That's the very libertarian view of it, that every gun law is an infringement. Mm-hmm. And when it comes down to it, it's what it is that as a people, we need to have the right to protect ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And the Second Amendment is never meant for hunting. It's never meant to protect yourself against a mugger. It's never meant to do anything like that. What the Second Amendment is, and full stop what it is to protect yourself against a tyrannical government.
Yeah, that's when it was created, right? In the late 1700s, when they were trying to fight against the English army for coming in. And hunting was normalized back then. You know, there wasn't, they didn't have PETA to protect the animals or any other humanitarian organization. It was just like, fuck you, we're staying here and we don't give a shit what your rules are. We need to protect ourselves in some way.
Right. And going on that hunting vein, I have to say, I am someone who loves animals, and I really do feel for PETA, and I really do feel for the unethical treatment of the manufacturing meat processing industry that we have. And that's why I like hunting. Mm-hmm. Because when this whole industrial complex of meat is around, the animals aren't being treated very well.
Yeah, that's something that we see happening over and over again, and it's just being exacerbated. And now that they tie that into climate change and how that's like what the number one contributor as far as emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, I think that is something that has to change.
And that is definitely something that we have to look at. But with that in mind, that's why I like going hunting. Mm-hmm. I like going hunting because I know that this animal is now, it's antibiotic free, it's free range, it's grass fed, it's every checklist off the book that you'd see in meat in Whole Foods, right? Mm-hmm. But I know that I now ethically and as pain free as possible have harvested this animal. And the reason why a lot of not farmers, the reason why a lot of hunters want to do it as pain-free as possible, besides just the respect that you have for the animal, is because if an animal suffers in its last few moments of life, it releases a lot of testosterone and a lot of chemicals into its body, a lot of fight or flight chemicals, and it actually taints the taste of meat.
Huh, interesting. I guess that kind of ties into what makes some things kosher, right? It has to be ethically killed and cleansed, and a few other practices that I don't really remember, and I'm a bad Jew for that. But it's all about, like we said, the ethical killing. And now that I think about it, hunting, you'd think, contributes less towards climate change than just packing everyone into a little meat plant and just having them far all over the place in one area.
Right. Hunting is not scalable. Right?
That's true, though.
you can't tell the entire U.S. population, if you want meat, you go hunt. So I understand why we need to have the farms that we do have and the meat processing that we do have. But as many people as can, I think, should hunt, because another reason is also hunters are the biggest contributors to environmental causes.
That's true too. A lot of poachers out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, poachers are something else, but hunters that actually pay their tags.
Okay.
A lot of that tag money goes towards keeping the environment and the area that's hunted well maintained.
The double entendre.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are awake now. We literally just hit the Second Amendment right off the bat. So before we dive any deeper, could we get an explanation of who you are, and just give us a brief 2-3 minute conversation of just your backstory, how you ended up in Vegas and leading up to Full Conceal?
Sure. So I ended up in Vegas back in 2011. Yes, 2011. It was right before I was getting married. My fiance and myself at the time, we were growing up in LA, and we knew that LA is just unaffordable. It's just something that we didn't want to live in our parents' basement for the rest of our lives. So we immediately moved to Vegas and had jobs in manufacturing. I went to insurance sales and did a whole bunch of different things. And 2011 is right in the middle of the recession. So I got a job offer and I didn't finish college. And I worked for about 7 years. And then when things started calming down again, I said, you know what, college, let's go back. Let's finish this. So I went back to college, went back to the school that I stopped going to.
What school?
Cal State Northridge.
Okay.
And I finished up my degree, and I had in mind to go to law school. And I took my LSATs. I got around 160, 165. I don't quite remember, but it was in that realm. So good enough to get into law schools.
That's what's the passing grade? If you remember,
I think 150 is when you start getting accepted into law school.
Okay, so you're eligible to become a lawyer.
Yeah. What's funny actually about all that is that when you are studying for your LSATs and when you're seeing all these people that are going to law school, normal people have this thing in their mind that lawyers are very smart, right? They're not very smart. What I like breaking it down to is what the legal system has done is they've created their own language and they all talk it. So it sounds like they're smarter than everyone else, but really they're just talking a different language.
Rabble.
Rabble. Exactly. That's all it is. I've met some very idiot lawyers that are making decent money because they speak the language. So I got that good LSAT score. I was about to go into law school. I was doing all the applications, got good letters of rec. And because I had these friends that were already in the legal field telling me, and also mentors in college telling me, law isn't the place to be. It's a soul-sucking place to be. So I said, you know what? Okay, fine. Before I go into law school, let's see what kind of jobs are out there. And I went on ZipRecruiter, and I saw new gun company hiring for sales positions. Great. Let's send my resume, see what happens. Just take a drink of water here.
Hey, he's getting ready for the full story, which is interesting too. I do want to interject that it seems that this is a common theme once people get out of college, that you don't typically go into what you want to. You almost have a quarter life crisis. You know, back in the day, it was the midlife crisis in the 40s with all the dads buying Mustangs. And now it's the quarter life crisis of the college graduates are realizing, holy shit, is this what I want to do the rest of my life?
Well, let's also be clear. If I get the time to do it, I do want to go to law school, but for myself, right? I want that degree, not necessarily to practice law, but to have that knowledge.
Yeah, practical use.
Right. But okay, so back on track. I applied to this sales position at a company called Full Conceal, and I didn't know anything about them. They were, I think, 2 months into production when I applied, and I saw through ZipRecruiter that they saw my application, they saw my resume. I thought, great, that's cool. Like hour later, I saw that they looked at it a second time. I thought, that's amazing. And then the next morning I saw that they checked it out a third time. And that's when I went, all right, you know what? They looked at my resume 3 times. They already know who I am. I like guns. I want to get into this industry, if anything, for the industry discounts. And I found their address and I knocked on their door.
Dude, traditional old school style.
Yeah, I dressed up in slacks and a button down, and I said, I saw you looked at my resume. I want to talk with you.
That's the go-getters. I'm a big advocate for, if you want something, you have to go out there and fucking take it. You can't just sit back and let it come to you.
100%. And that's actually something else that I want to hit on as well, that mentality. So I knocked on the door. Within the next day, I think the next morning, I got the job, signed an NDA, did the whole thing. And one of my core mentalities, and this is something actually that my father-in-law taught me, is always treat the business like you own it, right? And that doesn't mean you get to just fuck around and do whatever. I mean, when it comes down to it, and let's say the business owner, especially in a small business, tells you, hey, go out to Staples and buy me some paper and pens. You don't go, well, I'm going to get the Mont Blanc pens because I'm on the company dime. No, you get the big pens. They work just as well. And that extra savings there, plus all the extra savings that you end up doing, can end up to something that is meaningful towards the company. And if they see it and they see that you're not treating a company like a piggy bank, that it'll end up paying you back in spades, right? You get that promotion, you get you get a pay raise, you get all these things that come along with it. And like what happened to me when about a year and a half, 2 years into working there, the CEO had a very hard time managing the manufacturing side. And because I treated the company like I owned it and nothing was beneath me, it was from doing sales to managing the marketing team, to managing the sales team, to cleaning the bathrooms, to seeing how the manufacturer was running, and even hopping on the $60, $70, $80, $100,000 CNC machines, right? Because I just wanted to learn every aspect of it. So I had that understanding of manufacturing. So I told him, before you sell off this manufacturing side of the company, give me a go at it. Let me see if I could do it. So I was sold the manufacturing portion of the company, and they were still doing all the sales and marketing. And that's how I became a business owner there. I don't own any part of the parent company, Full Conceal. I just own the manufacturing side of it.
It's a subsidiary of it?
Not even. It's just we have a partnership.
Okay.
And we've had a little bit of a slowdown because of the marketing side of the company and sales side of the company that I'm not really going to get into. But because of that slowdown, and because I like just working and doing stuff, I didn't want to sit idly. So I actually came up with this second company that I'm doing on my own now, which is the Solvent Trap company.
I really enjoy that. That's something that I've harped on since I started this podcast, which was in the middle of the pandemic, is that this is the best rebranding opportunity we will have in a long time, as far as building a new project or just pivoting your life in general. And yours isn't necessarily pivot. Yours is more of an addition on top of whatever you're doing. But once life reemerges from this pandemic and gets back to, I guess, quote unquote, the new normal, we'll find out who all the leaders are, because they're the ones who put the time in when the world was slowing down, and will succeed.
Right. Yeah. And what I like about my company that I'm starting now, the Solvent Trap one, it's not a firearms company. It's a firearms accessory company. What was it? I think it was nearly 4 million guns sold last month.
Wow.
Right.
So has there been an uptick in gun sales since the COVID has happened?
Since COVID, there's been an uptick in gun sales. And what I actually find very funny is I started following this whole COVID thing back in the middle of January. And I said, this doesn't seem right. China's actions don't match up to what they're saying is going on. So I actually started preparing and stocking up on everything that I need back in late January, mid-February.
I hope you weren't the toilet paper hoarder.
I wasn't, no. No. But I have all my toilet paper. I have all my paper towels, but it was mostly just dry foods, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I don't know how bad coronavirus is, right? Because back in March, right, we thought it was some sort of AIDS flu. Mm-hmm. So I said, I don't know how bad it is or isn't, but I'm planning on staying in my house. And the reason is not because I was necessarily afraid of the virus. I was afraid of civil unrest.
And that's kind of stemmed, it's transgressed down that road a little bit.
Right.
Due to things that aren't necessarily just COVID related.
Right.
But when the world's in hysteria and a lot of the normal traditions are broken, a lot of other things seem to break down with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I was telling you before we started recording this, it's very, very easy to be liberal and be very just forgoing your rights when everything is good, mm-hmm. right? But that's the time when we should be standing even stronger and taller and saying, wait a minute, no, these rights aren't here for the good times, right? These rights are here for the bad times. Mm-hmm. And that also I'm very, very libertarian in that sense. And as much as I going on a different path, as much as I disagree with Nazis and white supremacists and all that, I'm very much for their right to stand up and spew their hatred, right?
Because it's freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. Hate speech is part of freedom of speech.
Unfortunately, but it is. And that's also something that gets infringed upon a lot, is freedom of speech. Now that you see with like YouTube and a bunch of the social media companies and even just traditional news companies are censoring information or censoring words or deplatforming people.
Right.
Which is another gray area within itself.
Right. And I understand that these companies are private companies and they could do whatever they want, but especially in times like these where everyone's locked in their homes, the argument is there to be said that as much as these companies are private companies, they're also a public square, right? So if these companies now are public squares, they can't really go out and say, hey, I don't like your speech. I don't like your speech. We need to shut them down. And unfortunately, it's that most of the people that are targeted are right of center.
Do you think freedom of speech and freedom to bear arms kind of go hand in hand with each other, and that if one falls, the other falls, and vice versa?
Well, I mean, we don't really have to take a big leap. Let's take a look at the UK, okay. Right? The UK got rid of guns in, I think it was the mid-90s, maybe late 80s. I can't remember the time exactly. But it hasn't been a very long time that they got rid of their firearms there. And then we see someone like Count Dankula, who's a comedian, right? And he taught his dog, very cute little pug dog, right, to do the Nazi salute whenever he said Hail Hitler, right? It's a funny little bit, maybe a bit dark humor, but that's his niche of comedy, right? Mm-hmm. And every comedian, I think, goes through this, and we see that with Sarah Silverman and Jimmy Kimmel, and everybody has this point of dark comedy where that's what comedy is. It pushes the boundaries of what you can say and what you can't say. And as soon as he did that, he immediately had the gauntlet thrown at him. He might have been put in jail. He was definitely given a fine, and that's not freedom of speech.
It's not at all. Yeah, it's censorship. And so, do you think if he had a weapon, he could have protected himself in this situation, even though it is necessarily government?
I don't think him personally having a weapon, but I think people having weapons and people being able to stand up to their government.
Yeah, it makes the government second guess themselves, and even in America, you see that where even some far right or left wing, which now we've seen with Antifa and the Chop Zone, that the government's become hesitant to go into a specific area that is labeled as danger because they all have weapons and they don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be. Right.
I mean, the Chop Zone is now taken down because they were all just a bunch of babies, but they were all LARPing. But yeah, when it comes down to it, and my personal view on the Second Amendment is, and I sort of hinted at it before, it's not person, it's people. So the right of the people to bear arms. So I don't necessarily think that an individual should be able to own a nuclear weapon, right? Or a biochemical weapon or anything like that, that gives the individual enough power to overthrow the government. But if there's a type of weaponry that people have to overthrow the government, then I think that's something that we need to look at.
Right. I do think that is along the right lines, that you kind of have to group it as people and not the person. But it does seem, especially recently in the past 5 years, that it is individual people who kind of exploit the overall person of giving the opportunity to have weapons. And, this transgresses into like mass shootings and different civil unrest situations. Right. Is there, how do we fix that? Is that with just more universal background checks, or is it kind of just something that is tagged along with the Second Amendment?
Unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with the cost of freedom, right? And I'd like to live in a perfect world where it's all sunshine and rainbows, but that's just not the case. Are there things that we can do? I'm sure there are. And if you take a look at it, as bad as our mental health system was back in the 60s and 70s, we didn't really have this spate of mass shootings like we do today. And I think that a lot of it has to do with mental health. And a lot of people, if you take a look at it, it's not just being quote unquote crazy. It's a lot of overwork. It's a lot of underplay, right? And I don't think today we have the work-life balance all the way through elementary school, right? Elementary school on, there's hours upon hours upon hours of homework. There's no time for play. There's no time for all this stuff. To get people to have this exit that they can do and be able to talk with friends and really just mess around and play around and be normal people. Right.
So they kind of just force their exit with violent acts.
It could be that. It could be medication that they're put on. Right.
That seems to be a common factor I've seen, or at least that's the way that the media wants to portray it.
Right. So there's no one easy answer, but I do know that historically speaking, governments are a lot deadlier than individual people.
Yeah, 100%. They took the Chop Zone down, I think, and they said under an hour, when they just went in and was like, all right, guys, playtime is over. We're tired of this. Someone died and it's your guys' fault. Yeah. So now we have to come in and fix this. Also, too, just going on mass shootings, something too that, the media doesn't point out and they portray in a different light, is that most of the people who are doing these violent acts are white people. The majority, probably like 90%. Do you have an idea of why maybe the white race kind of stems down this road?
I couldn't tell you, but that is probably something that needs to be studied.
Yeah.
I do know that, at least like we hit on before, a lot of the people that have been doing it, got their guns illegally. I think the only one that pops to mind that got their guns legally are the shooter here in Vegas and the Virginia Tech shooter. I think they both got their guns legally.
I didn't know that. I thought all of them were obtained legally through the mass shooters.
Most of them were obtained illegally because most of them were underage, right?
I guess with school shooting, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so it's something has to be done, and just this hyper partisanship that we're seeing is really the roadblock. But with that hyper partisanship that we're seeing, also, what I'm the silver lining of what we're seeing today with the protests and the coronavirus and all that is that I think individual people are now seeing that they're individually responsible for their safety.
Yep, that's something that I've noticed. That's something that we talked about before too, is that I've been slowly moving towards pro-gun right amendments, because even through this pandemic, something I noticed too is that the states and the governors have much more power than people realize. And that's that could be the pro or con of how the COVID pandemic's kind of resurging at the moment of this conversation. But the people have the power and the governors, so it's becoming more and more on a localized level. And so you're saying now that just kind of trickles down to personal freedom and personal protection.
Right. In a perfect world, I don't think that me and you as an average citizen should even know who the president is. Right. The president, in reality, their position means nothing. Through many years, pretty much since our founding, the executive branch has gotten more and more power.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's flowed.
Yeah. And it's just who we should focus on, and it's great that we're talking about this, especially in an election year, who we should focus on most as people, who to vote for and who's important to vote for, is our city council members, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that have to do with our day-to-day lives.
Yep, that's something I had Michael Naff, the Clark County Commissioner, on here in the very beginning days. And that was a question I actually asked him is why is there so much focus on the overall government, the federal government, when the localized government actually has much more power? And it's been shown through the last few months. And so I do think that people need to pay attention more. And I've been saying too that there's going to be a return to localism. Like everyone you see on social media is support your local businesses. Go help your friend out. Don't go support fucking McDonald's and these fast food chains or whatever the overarching mainstream brands are. Just go local.
And I do think that with that same thought in mind, I think that a lot of people now seeing what's going on with the situation that we're in today, a lot of people are going, do I really need to live in a city? Right?
Yes.
Almost everything can be done on Zoom calls right now. Unless you have to live in a city, I think a lot of people are going to move out.
Yes. I follow Silicon Valley pretty closely, and they also have the same thesis that a lot of Silicon Valley people are going to move out into the rural areas over the next 5-10 years. And then maybe once that becomes a little bit more strained, then it'll transgress back to the city life. But a lot of people are starting to see now that everything is more remote. Just get your individual protection and whatever you need, and you can go live out in a suburb or out in a small city, and you can be completely fine.
I have a buddy who lives in South Dakota, and they're a big tech hub right now, and a lot of people are moving out to South Dakota because cost of living is so cheap. And Facebook, I'm sure, loves it, because I think from what I've heard, I haven't seen this confirmed, from what I've heard, they actually do a cost of living pay now.
Yes.
So if you're living in Silicon Valley, then of course you're going to get paid more. If you're not, then you're going to get paid very handsomely, but you're not going to be paid as much. So now if I was in, let's say, Facebook's shoes, I'd say I'd want to hire people that live in these rural areas, because that means I could get 2 rock star developers for the price of half of one in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's almost a win-win situation, like all around for all the individual parties.
Right. And also what it does is a lot of the issues that we were talking about before, this hyper partisanship within, let's say, Twitter and Facebook and these social media companies comes from a lot of their developers are in Silicon Valley, right? They see the worldview through their little cityscape.
Yeah, it's distorted.
Right. And if we get more people there and more people from different areas going, hey, wait a minute, that's I think you're going a little bit extreme to the left, or I think you're going a bit extreme to the right on this one, I think that'll just make healthier conversation. Yeah,
the views are skewed, especially in California, where it just historically leans very far left or to the farthest you could go. So I'm curious then, once all these people, they move out into rural areas and they need individual protection, we'll just tie this into Full Conceal. How does Full Conceal help with this?
So from Full Conceal standpoint, what it is it's a folding pistol. It's based off a Glock 19. And standard, it comes with 21 rounds in the mag plus 1 in the chamber. I've been all over the U.S. in the most rural of areas, and a lot of times when I see a police officer there, I talk with them, show them my product, because it does print like a cell phone in the pocket. So I want to show them this, hey, be on the lookout. This is here. This is the company that I represent, and I want you guys to be safe. And then the question comes about, why did we make this product, right? There's a ton of subcompact guns out there that can be easily concealed. And the main reason is that if you take a look at, let's say, police statistics in a high stress situation, accuracy rates go down to low 30s, maybe even high 20s, right? And that's police officers. So a subcompact generally have 6, 7, sometimes 8 rounds. A few newer ones are coming out with 10 rounds. But if your shot accuracy is in the high 20s, low 30s, that doesn't give you very many shots to be accurate on, right? Especially if you're not training for high stress situations. So as much as the gun world doesn't like to admit it and doesn't like talking about it, unless bullets are flying your way, you don't know how you're going to react and you don't know what your accuracy is going to be. So my personal opinion on it, it's really accuracy by volume. And you'll get dragged for saying that, and every bullet has an address, and I understand and I agree with that wholeheartedly. But there's real life scenario and there's Rambo scenarios.
I'm interested. So it's a foldable gun. I'm surprised no one's created a foldable gun beforehand. Has there been anybody who's tried to do that before you? Any predecessors?
So there is a company called a Life Card, and they make a little gun that's like it could fit in an Altoids tin.
Oh wow!
And that just shoots one bullet. It's a 22. And historically though, it was only a prototype in, I think it was Soviet Ukraine, and it was called the Gnome, and that's the closest thing to what I've seen, which is our full size foldable gun.
Wow, yeah. Foldable guns have appeared in movies for decades now, and you've even seen it most recently in Westworld. I mean, it wasn't a foldable handgun; it was a foldable machine gun. But I'm sure that opportunity will be presented, especially with full conceal, if there's much more success.
Yeah, I actually worked closely with ISS. ISS is the name of a prop house that on the West Coast, at least, they're the ones that are responsible for guns in movies. Mm-hmm. And I worked closely with them, getting them guns. At one point they were buying about 2 or 3 guns a week from me for a good month, because so many different TV shows and movies wanted our gun on set.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So it's full conceal's based here. Do you guys sell across the country nationally or even internationally?
So yeah, we sell nationally, and we do some international sales. Those are mostly to military, but they're in some countries. I think we have some in Kosovo, we have in South Africa, Thailand, Philippines.
Can you ship guns through the mail? Is that legal?
Yes.
Sounds like there's an asterisk to that.
Yeah, there's an asterisk. If you ship guns through USPS, through the Postal Service, you have to ship it, and this is actually across the board, you have to ship it to an FFL dealer, federal firearm licensed. Okay. With USPS, you just have to declare it. You sign a piece of paper that says, hey, I'm shipping firearms, and this is where it's going, this is the date, and they're cool, and they probably lose that paperwork, but they say they file it. The reason why I say they lose it is because they actually lost 10 guns.
Really?
And they're like, well, the paperwork. And I'm like, well, you had the paperwork, and they magically found it, and it didn't look like the ones that
like, can you imagine you just get a box and it's like a gun? You're like, where the fuck did this come from?
Yeah, it was lost at, I think it was the Los Angeles International Terminal.
Oh, no.
So
that's probably the biggest terminal out there.
Yeah. So 10 guns that were going to, I think, Philippines got lost. We found all but one, but it was just a headache.
Since Full Conceal is a foldable gun and it's a new technology, is there any sort of license needed for this?
So if you're going to carry it, you need your CCW or I think other places call it CLP or something like that. You need your concealed weapons permit if you're going to carry it concealed. Some states don't have concealed weapons permits, like California, who doesn't allow you almost to carry it unless you're a movie star or a judge or something. And some places take it to the other extreme, like Arizona, where if you could own a gun, you could conceal it. No license needed.
What are the benefits to having a CCW to not having one?
So that's a big debate in the gun world. One of the pros, let's say, of having a CCW is you could carry concealed and nobody has to know that you have a gun. That's probably the biggest one. If you don't look like a target, you're not going to be a target, right?
That makes sense. We see a lot of accidental shootings with people that are open carrying on their hip, and police see it as active aggression, even though it may not be.
Right. And that's a counterpoint, sort of the people who really like open carrying. And this also came from the instructor that I had when I was taking my CCW course. He said, I've had a gun pulled out on me, I think he said 3 or 4 times, and it was never when he was open carrying. Because if you're open carrying, you have, think of it almost like a porcupine, right? You look threatening, so no one's going to threaten you. But if, let's say that scenario where someone comes into a shopping mall and wants to start shooting up the place, they see someone with a gun on their hip, they're going to shoot them first.
Yeah, so it plays really into human psychology is the largest component to that metric.
Personally, I think carry however you feel most comfortable, right? And that's also what I tell people when they're shopping for a gun is don't just buy a gun that the sales rep behind the counter tells you. Test out every single gun because it's very personal, right? Some people love the 1911, right? Others can't stand it. And 1911 is one of the oldest gun models there are.
Okay.
Personally, I love it, right? And then there's people that love the Glock and can't shoot anything else. And same goes for everything else. I remember when I was about to buy a gun for my wife, I saw this little snub nose 38, and I was like, a little revolver. And I was like, all right, let me test this out. If I like it, then I'll let her try it. And I bought like 10 rounds to test it out with, and I shot 2 and I put it down and I said no.
There's when you see gun owners, I don't know if this is official statistic, but at least the people that I know who own guns own like 10 guns. It's not just like one. They become an enthusiast and obsessed with it. I don't know why, but it just seems like people who really dive into the gun realm, like we absolutely love it.
So my father-in-law actually jokes around with me. He says, "You only have 2 hands. Why do you need so many guns?" And the reason is because a gun is a tool. And just like I don't own one screwdriver at home, right? I have a Phillips head, I have a flat head, I have a long, I have a short, I have this size, that size, the other. Every single one does something different. Some I'll take if I'm going hiking, right? Others I'll take if I'm going to the store, right? So every single one does something a little different.
Interesting. I like that analogy. I never even thought of it like that. But they all do something different, but they all do have the same outcome, which is to kill. Right.
Well, yeah.
Or protect. I guess it depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Huh. So how do you transition to manufacturing these guns? Obviously, we've covered what the gun is. It's just a foldable handgun, in short. And then you have the sales component. You sell all over the U.S. What is so different about the manufacturing component to the company?
So really, it's just focusing on different things. Right. The manufacturing component, I have to maintain certain licenses, certain insurances and stuff like that. That license being an FFL and within the FFL licenses, I think there's 12 different FFL licenses, all the way from just being someone who sells guns to someone who imports guns. Right.
So basically, on the contrary to what people make it seem like, that the gun realm isn't regulated. It seems like it's highly regulated with 11 licenses just to manufacture a weapon.
Hyper regulated. Yeah. There's, and not only that. So I have my FFL Class 7, which that's the license that allows me to manufacture firearms. And on top of that, I have a license called an SOT. An SOT is a special occupational tax, which I have to renew every year, and that's the license that allows me to make suppressors and machine guns. And if you're caught without that license and with that gun, it's
jail time?
Bad news. I think it's 15 years or something like that. Yeah.
So when you're manufacturing this weapon, is it like, I'm picturing like a warehouse with like an assembly belt and there's multiple people going down the assembly line putting these weapons together. Is that kind of the same system that is run for this?
Yeah. So I have my huge safe that I store every gun in, because that's part of the licensing agreement, that everything has to be in a safe. And I have my CNC machines that go ahead and make the guns and make the parts.
What's CNC stand for?
Computer number or something.
Is it the one that puts the serial numbers on it?
No, it's actually a CNC is a big machine mine is about the size of this room.
It's about 500 square feet. Yeah.
Yeah. And what they do is they actually, it's a computerized mill.
Okay. That makes sense.
So you program it like a computer program and tell it exactly what cuts to do and exactly how the duration and the stops and the goes and all that. And it actually, from a piece of metal, it makes a gun.
Huh. Interesting.
And then it goes off to the finishing and the QC and the building and all that.
And then once the product's done, stored in the safe, and then you ship it off to the full Conceal, the actual company, and then they do the sales tactic to it.
Right.
Do you guys build anything outside of handguns?
So that's actually the company that is going to get off the ground here in probably September is what we're hoping.
For Solvent Traps?
For Solvent Traps, yeah. Solvent Traps on their face are a cleaning device. You screw it onto the end of your barrel of your either pistol or your rifle, and it catches the solvent as you clean your barrel out, so it doesn't drip all over your floor, right? What's interesting about Solvent Traps, and now this is getting into the technicality of the gun world, and what I like about them is that even in the gun world, a lot of people don't know about Solvent Traps. If you want to go and buy a suppressor, the process is as short as 6 months and as long as 18 months. And you fill out something called a Form 4. And the reason why it's so long is that the FBI background check only takes 2 weeks. The FBI background check isn't that long. The reason why Form 4 is so long is because it's all done manually. It all gets shipped over, I think, to Virginia. And there's actually a group of people with a stack of Form 4s that they're going through them individually, making sure that all of the information on them is correct. What Solvent Trap is it's through a Form 1. And what a Form 1 is you telling the government, hey, government, I'm building my own silencer. And all that's done online, an e-form. So the person that checks off on it pretty much already saw that the computer came back, everything is okay with your application. FBI background check came back, everything is clean. So,
pun intended.
Yeah. So they tell you that yes, you could go ahead and build your own solvent trap, and that approval time takes 30 days.
Interesting. So it looks literally like he showed me before this, but it literally looks like a silencer, like you see in like a James Bond movie that you put at the end of a gun.
Yeah. And because you get to pick your own serial numbers, I had a little fun with it. My serial number is 8675309. Like the song.
8675309.
But yeah, so that's the concept behind it. Now, here's a misconception with silencers. So silencer is actually a name of a company, right? Just like Kleenex is the name of a company.
Wow, they captured that market.
Right? So it's good and bad in terms of copyright. But so gunshots are really loud, like really loud.
Yeah, people know. Know.
Yeah, and I think every shooter has at one point or another shot without hearing protection. And I did it once when I was hunting, and it was a total accident. And I'll tell you what, that's the first and last time that I'm going to do that because it sucks. Ringing in your ear for like 3 days, and like you nearly see white because it's so loud. And what a suppressor does is it doesn't make a gun silent, right? That's the marketing aspect. Mm-hmm. Silencer is the marketing aspect. It makes your gun silent like James Bond. It doesn't do anything like that. What it does is it takes it from doing near permanent damage to your hearing to making it just under hearing safe. So it's still around 120 decibels, which is...
That's extremely loud.
Very loud. Yeah, very loud, but not loud enough to damage your hearing.
So would you say a silencer is used more as an honorable use than mischievous, like the movies make it out to be?
I know over in Europe, in some countries, it's easier to get a silencer than it is to get a gun.
Wow.
Because it's just considered good manners, right? Hunters especially, because you want to be able to hear that deer, you want to be able to hear that hog, you want to hear that animal. And then as soon as you have your sights on it, you don't want to take that time and put your hearing protection on, because what if something changes?
Yeah, you're in the moment. Every second is precious when you're hunting.
Right. So the silencer is really there as a tool to help you stay safe while being able to take that clean shot.
Yeah, and yours, the Solvent Trap, it seems like it has another component attached to that, right? It cleans it as well.
Right. Yeah. You could keep it as a solvent trap, and that's how I'm selling it. And that's what I'm telling people to do. In fact, I'm telling people, don't turn it into a suppressor, but if you do, this is the legal ways that you do it in.
Okay.
Right.
And so how actually does it clean? I'm curious, like what is it doing?
So all it's doing really is it's the end of a barrel is threaded.
Okay.
Right. So you just thread it onto the end of that barrel, and you run your solvent through the.
That's like
barrel.
the gunpowder equivalent, kind of.
It's like a cleaning lubricant.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay.
So guns are very dirty, right? The gunpowder, the explosion, the carbon builds up, and actually the barrel is slightly smaller than the bullet, so the rifling has enough to grab onto the bullet and twist it, and makes it more accurate as it flies down. So there's a lot of fouling inside the barrel. So you need to clean it out, or you're going to have a bad time.
Can you attach this solvent trap to things that aren't a pistol, or necessarily just full conceal?
Yeah. You could attach it to. I have mine attached to my rifle. You could attach it to a pistol, and it's really, as you get into the solvent trap world and the suppressor world, you see what you can do with it, and it's amazing.
Are there more solvent trap companies, or is this something that you created within your own niche and knowledge?
There are a few of them out there, but from what I've seen, a lot of them are just, they're good guys, but they're machinists. They're not these marketers. They're not people that know how to sell. They're just people that are really good at running a machine. So what I'm here doing is going, wait a minute, this is a great product and I know how to sell. So I'm going to go ahead and make my own and sell them, because I know how to do the machinist part of it, and I know how to do the marketing part of it. So why not?
Yeah, your skill stacking, which is something that I preach on a lot, is you have so much specific knowledge that is impervious to you that no one else can replicate that, because you've been doing this for what, 4 years now?
Something like that, yeah.
Around 4 years now. So it's interesting. And what caused your conception of the idea? Was it just something that you had been thinking about for a long time, and then due to sitting around, you just decided to launch it, or was there something else?
So every gun owner at one point or another will want a silencer. And I'm going to use the word silencer and suppressor interchangeably. Every gun owner at one point or another wants it. And then they go and look at, okay, well, what do I need to do to get it? Because I've seen it at the gun stores. I know I could buy it, right? They're legal in, I think, 37 or 38 states. So you then start down this path of, okay, let me buy this silencer. And then you see they're $1,000. Okay, well, $1,000 is a lot, but I could spend that. And then you see there's a $200 tax on top of that. So you go, well, okay, fine. I'm already spending $1,000. So here's another $200. And then they tell you, all right, come back sometime in the future, no earlier than 6 months, but it's probably going to be closer to a year. And a lot of people go, wait, I'm dropping $1,200. I want the product now. Right. So, and that was my whole thing as well. It's just, I wanted a suppressor and I wanted it now. And that's when I went down this rabbit hole of how do I get a suppressor faster, right? And I saw this. It was a lot of tongue in cheek, like, "Hey, this is a solvent trap, not a suppressor," and it's not, right? And that's a lot of the game that you have to play with the government, and that's the game that unfortunately all have to play. But it's as we're selling it, it's a solvent trap, but it gives you the tools to be able to legally manufacture your own suppressor.
And do you guys assist with the application process to get to own this?
That is something. So that's actually another website that I bought to help people with the application.
Yeah, it could be. It's intimidating, honestly, because there's just so much misconceptions that surround it. Like, you've already gave me a lot of information that I had no idea. I thought silencers were just like flat out illegal to begin with.
Yeah, no. They're very much legal. And going on that, like I said, in a machine gun is illegal with an asterisk, right? You can legally buy a machine gun, you yourself as an individual. But there's a few different things that have to happen.
There's like a trade, like you could buy them at trade shows, correct?
No.
Something like that. I know there's like some weird law surrounding that.
No, so the gun show loophole, that's all a misconception as well. Okay. If you're buying a gun, you have to go through a background check, right? Especially if it's through a dealer, which a lot of these gun shows have a lot of dealers. All their sales have to go through a background check. So gun show loophole is a misnaming of something, right? What the gun show loophole thing wants to protect against is, let's say, right now we're going through this time where everyone feels like they need a gun, and I go, I know you don't have one here. Why don't you borrow mine for the next 2-3 weeks until you go get yours, right? I know you personally as a friend, and here you could take my gun to protect yourself.
And that's an honorable gesture,
right? Until you go out and get your own, right? What this whole gun show loophole thing wants to do is it wants to stop that from happening. It also wants to stop from, let's say, me giving my children a gun, right? I could pass it down because it's my own personal item, but the gun show loophole thing wants to make sure that I can't pass my guns down, right? But going back to how do you legally own a machine gun? It takes about a year, maybe even 18 months of background check time, just because all the applications are done on paper. And the machine gun has to be made before 1986. I think it's May 15th, 1986, if I remember correctly. And also you need to have a boatload of money. Because there's not very many of them available that are legal, and a lot of them are in collections. If you find, let's say, a full auto M16 or MAC-10 or Uzi or something, a lot of the times they'll go for $30,000.
Jesus, that is crazy. I don't know. The gun industry, like I said, you've explained a lot to me, but there's still so much that surrounds it that I don't even realize. And also, too, I've noticed in Vegas that there's a bunch of gun stores and gun ranges, and it seems like a lot of vets confide in those areas. Is the gun industry in Vegas one of the largest industries specifically?
We have actually a good number of manufacturers here. But what Vegas is good at is there's a lot of people that come in here day in, day out, especially when there's no shutdowns, right? And what Vegas has done as an industry, and it started with the gun store. And what they've done is everyone wants to shoot a machine gun, right? So that's what they market it. You go to these gun stores, you go to these gun ranges, and you get to shoot a machine gun. A lot of these people have never even held a gun in their life before. So that's what the Vegas industry is for guns.
Yeah, it's become a very transient town. People are always coming in and out. People are moving in and out.
Yeah, but also tourists.
The tourists, yeah. Let's say that Vegas, right? It keeps expanding. Would you consider it a hub for the gun industry? There
are, off the top of my head, right now, I know of at least 5 gun manufacturers here in Vegas. And one of the big reasons why the gun manufacturers are here is that SHOT Show is here.
Is that's the biggest gun show?
That's the industry gun show. Okay. And it's 4 days long. And I think someone did the math. If you spend, 5 minutes at each booth, you're going to take 7 days to go through the whole show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you set up a booth there?
Oh, yeah.
You guys are there every year? So it's not just guns, there's accessories as well?
Yeah, guns, accessories. There's some like tactical clothing lines that are there.
Do you think the industry will get away from this big convention now with COVID going on, and now that everything is going increasingly more online sales, that it just becomes almost redundant?
So these gun shows are good because a lot of the way the gun industry works is how does the gun feel in my hand, right? And a lot of it has to do with teaching, right? Why does this new gun here, which is a bolt action rifle, let's say, why is this different than every other bolt action rifle? So you need to hold it and feel it and touch it, and that's why these gun shows are good. But with that being said, the European gun show that I was supposed to go to, which is the SHOT Show equivalent over in Europe, that got canceled this year. So I don't think conventions as a whole are going to go away, but I do think they'll look very different.
Yeah, I think just the increasing amount of online marketing now that everything is just becoming more decentralized.
It'll be very hard for new companies to break through if conventions go away.
Yeah, at least your grandfathered in, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I don't like the concept of just having all the old companies stay, because if there's no fire under their butts to innovate, to make something new, Remington, right? You as not a gun guy, you know who Remington is, right? They just filed for bankruptcy.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think it's the second time within 3 years. So these companies, and not just gun industry companies as a whole, I think need to constantly innovate. And if they don't get the fire under their butt to innovate from going to these conventions and seeing what this smaller guy is up to and making shockwaves, I think that'll be bad for industries as a whole.
Yeah, and that's not just specifically the gun industry. You see this happen a lot with saturations of power, most primarily in the banking industry, right? The most popular banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, these have been around for 200 years, and these are the people who are just constantly making terrible decisions and corrupting our economy. Oh, yeah. You know, that transgresses down. So the people that stay at the top longer, like you said, there's no motivation for innovation. No, because it's like, we're already here. What's the point to do that?
Yeah, we'll spend $1 million having, I don't know, some actor rep our brand rather than putting that $1 million into making our product better.
Would you have any advice for anybody who's listening that may be considering opening up some sort of weapons or firearm business? Like how tough was it in the beginning?
You have to almost be in the industry to make something happen. But with that being said, get your licenses. It's not worth it to do it without it. And licenses, they do background checks on you. They do all that stuff. They even come to your business and come to your shop and see that everything is above board and up to code and up to par. And as soon as you get those out of the way and done, the world is at your oyster. It's just really making it happen. And just in regards to all business, really, what I've seen that makes people successful isn't necessarily being smart. It isn't necessarily having a lot of money. A lot of it has to do, and it's a little bit of stupidity. It's a lot of it is just not giving up. It's you need to work harder than the next guy to make this work.
Yes, persistence.
Just stupid persistence, right?
Yeah, I could tell you when my first business that I opened, Next Gen Pickers, I probably went to the business office, I kid you not, 7 or 8 times in the matter of a month, because they're like, oh, you forgot this paperwork. Oh, you didn't do this right. You didn't do this right. And there's multiple times where I was like, dude, fuck this. Like, what is the point of this? Oh, this is idiotic.
Nothing will turn you right-leaning more than trying to open up a business.
Oh, dude, it's terrible. And even like after my business application sat for a month, I finally went down there, no one is answering, and they're like, oh, you need a regulated business license. They're like, so then you have to get an FBI or background check and all these different things, because apparently money laundering is a big concern when you open an antique shop.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was like, oh, it makes sense, because there's no like database where you could just order off of Amazon. Everything is just like, oh, I sold this for $1,000. Oh, I sold this radio, $2,000. It was a crazy collector. I don't know where he lives anymore.
Right.
So there's all those different behind the scenes ideals that doesn't replicate on like the application that you see, and you're just sitting there in confusion. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And you know, the two things that I really want to imprint on someone that's listening, trying to start their business is one is treat every company that you work for like you own it, right? Just make sure that you do whatever you can possible to make this company succeed. And that's also part of the reason why I like working for smaller companies rather than big corporations, because your work really shows in smaller companies rather than I'm one of a million people working here, right?
Yeah.
And another thing is if you're starting your own company and you really believe in your idea, don't stop. You're going to have a roadblock. Something's going to mess your day up. Something's going to mess your week up. Something might even nearly derail the company or completely derail the company. But it's your job, if you truly believe in this, to keep on trucking, keep on going.
Yeah, success is not linear by any case. There's more downs than ups. And sometimes you even have to take 2 or 3 steps back. Like you're saying, you get derailed, but then you take 4 steps forward.
Yeah.
Just there's so much effort that goes behind it. And a lot of days you're going to wake up questioning why you even do this. And it isn't even just like a business that is in a government database. You know, this could be a podcast, a brand, anything that you're doing.
I mean, what are we? You said number 26?
This is 26, yeah.
26, yeah. So you know, Joe Rogan started somewhere like this once, right? And what I like saying is it's an overnight success, years in the making.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I might have to quote you on that. I might have to be the soundbite for that.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it comes down to. I can't think of anything that was a true overnight success. And even if you think it was, you look into it, and some of these one-hit wonders, right, that we talk about, and like, well, oh my God, Carly Rae Jepsen is the first one that pops to mind. I forgot the name of her song even. What was it?
Friday? It was Friday?
No,
that's someone else.
That was something black.
Yeah. I forget. I know who you're talking about because I think that came out when I was in like high school.
Yeah. So before she had that song, she spent years writing songs and making songs and just fine tuning her craft before she became what she is. An overnight success, years in the making.
Yeah, people only see the end result. They don't see the years of emotion and pain and sweat and amounts you wanted to give up and the discipline that's needed.
Elon Musk with SpaceX, right? What was it? I think before his 4th launch, he couldn't pay his rent if the launch wasn't successful.
Yeah, people don't realize SpaceX has been around almost 20 years already. Yeah. Like it started in the late 90s.
Yeah, and
early 2000s.
Now SpaceX is the biggest thing going, right? It's making you proud to be American sort of deal. But that wasn't an overnight success as much as people would like to think that it is.
Yeah, there's so many roadblocks. Did you have any previous business ventures when you were younger, maybe something you did in high school or when you're in college that made you some money that kind of got you in the entrepreneurial mindset?
I didn't really have that. I always knew that the only way to be successful is to be working on your own dreams, not someone else's. And along the same thought of line, you can't, if you're working to make someone else's dreams a reality, you're never going to make the kind of money that you feel like you should make, right? And when you're a business owner versus an employee, there's different perks of each. And those perks don't align at all, right? As an employee, I clock out at 5 o'clock. I don't have to worry about anything else. And it's sort of nice, to be honest. There's some things that I miss about being an employee. But as a business owner, I really have control over where my future is going. And even though I might say I'm taking a vacation, phone is always on me. Email is always on me.
Yeah, work travels with you.
Work travels with you at all times. And you're never truly, really taking a vacation. But hopefully if done right, then it pays out.
Pays out exponentially too.
Yeah, a lot of people also don't know that. They think that the business owner is some greedy guy, right, in the back room counting stacks of cash, and they don't understand that the business owner a lot of times doesn't take a paycheck.
Yeah,
right.
Especially in the beginning years, the first few years, you're in the negative. You're sacrificing your home life to be there. You're sacrificing not going out to eat. You can't take your girlfriend out. Like you just at home.
Because you got to sign that paycheck to that employee.
I think that's a big misconception behind capitalism. A lot of people, I saw this thing about Jeff Bezos yesterday that his wealth increased to 160 billion or something like that. And he could end world hunger and a bunch of different things, which I know he has a bunch of noble causes he's done already, but people don't realize the hard work that he put in for over 20 years and the routes that he had to go through. And he had to go through much more. He had to go through the government. He had to wreck industries. There's like so much behind it.
You know what? If you think you could beat Jeff Bezos and do something like that and do it better and make more money than him, more power to you. But if you want Jeff Bezos to spend all of his money for all these noble causes that he's worked so hard to attain all this money, if you could do that and you do that and turn around and spend all that money, that's your prerogative to do with your money what you want to do.
Yeah, that's if you see most billionaires, they start doing this towards the latter end of their life. Like you see with Bill Gates and the Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett's done this, and there's some other billionaires up there, but some of these billionaires are still in their prime. Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos is still, I think, early 50s.
I mean, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, he's still in his 30s. Yeah, still hammering it down. He's got a full life ahead of him.
Yeah, and you know what? I empathize with the thought of why does one person need to have all this wealth? I empathize with that. I understand where you're coming from. But if you want that, you need to work just as hard.
That's the benefit of capitalism.
Yeah.
Do you think the second right or the Second Amendment lasts in any sort of system outside of capitalism? Like if Bernie became president, do you think the pro-gun right amendment would last in a socialist society?
I can tell you that the best years outside of these last few months, right? The best years for the gun industry were during the Barack Obama days.
Really?
Because it felt like every week he came out and said that we need to ban guns, right? So a lot of people, what they did was they just every extra dime they had went to buying a gun, went to buying an accessory, went to buying something in the gun world. So much so that one of the biggest distributors in the U.S., their name was Ellett Brothers. Right before the 2016 election, they acquired another company called AccuSport, and they just bought an insane amount of inventory, just banking on the fact that they thought Hillary Clinton will win and gun sales will continue to skyrocket. As we know, Trump won, and for pretty much the last 3 years, gun sales have been hurting.
What do you think causes this?
Because no one's out there saying, I'm going to take your guns away.
It's the gotcha moment.
Yeah. Nothing is good for gun sales like a Democrat in office.
Interesting. I guess that's why the NRA is always bashing. Or I guess it's, actually, let me rephrase this. The NRA, I know they're heavy Republican, but it seems like they always are supporting the Republicans, even though the Democrats that if they were in office would increase their sales. It's interesting.
The NRA is its own different animal. Let's get off this off the bat. I find it funny when people say defund the NRA. The NRA is sustained by membership dues, right? It's by people like you and me telling the NRA, yeah, here's my $36 a year to be a member of the NRA, which really only gets you a spiffy magazine once a month.
Here, let's describe this more, because actually I want to learn more, because I actually don't really know much about the NRA. I just know that it's become like the emblem for the pro-gun movement. Is that exactly what it's used for?
The NRA is a lobbying firm. Okay. And this is just the way our government works, right? You have to, and a lot of it is also in, I guess, the art of the deal, right? where the NRA has to come to the government and tell them, we want machine guns, right? I mean, they don't, but we want machine guns. And then the government says, what? That's ridiculous. We're not giving you machine guns. And meanwhile, they wanted to ban guns. We're not giving you machine guns, but we'll settle with the AR-15. You could have that. Meanwhile, that's all they wanted, right? And just to clear misconceptions, AR-15 does not stand for assault rifle. AR stands for Armalite, which is the first company that made the AR.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's funny. So are gun companies required to be a part of the NRA since it's a lobbying firm?
No. I mean, we can be, but there's nothing required of us to be.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the only thing I really see about the NRA on the news is just the backlash against it because of, I guess, their lobbying practices.
Yeah, personally, I think the NRA has gotten a bit too fat, meaning that most of their money goes to pay high up executives and celebrities and the like, where I don't think a lot of their money is going towards what gun owners want.
What their cause is.
Right. Like the NRA, listen, bump stocks are stupid. I think every single gun owner will tell you bump stocks are stupid. But that wasn't the point when the NRA told Trump to go ahead and ban them. The point was, no, every gun law is an infringement, right?
Going back to the beginning.
Right. So that's part of it. It's yes, I understand bump stocks. I don't care if they're here or not here, but the fact is that the NRA didn't stand up and say, no, this is an infringement. Didn't give at least a little bit of a fight to it.
Yeah, it pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
No matter even if they care about it or not.
Right.
So would you say that the libertarian aspect is probably more pro-guns than Republicans?
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, there's the libertarian candidate right now. Her name is Jo Jorgensen, I think. I want to say. Personally, I've pretty much voted libertarian my entire adult life, and one of her platforms is ban the NFA, ban the ATF, ban all this stuff that is an infringement on our guns rights. I don't necessarily know if I'll go that far because background checks are a good thing, right? But I do definitely feel for that.
It's interesting how the amendment, just the whole gun industry, it just becomes separated by different political parties with different aspects.
Yeah.
Just blows my mind how that continues to happen. But as we said in the beginning, I am becoming more pro-guns just because of self-independence is, I think, where society is starting to push because you can't depend on your government as much. And the local economy is probably more important than what the fucking stock market's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It's what's funny to me is the people that called for banning guns because you could call the police a few years ago are the same people now saying defund the police. So if there's no police and there's no guns, who's going to protect you?
Yes, I did actually tweet when the beginning of the defund the police thing happened that if we did disband the police department, then the Second Amendment is here to stay forever because people have to protect themselves. Yeah. And if they disband the police, then you're going to see increased surveillance all across the United States because you're going to have to be able to see where people are or who walked into that store and shot it up or whatever the case is. So there are a bunch of trade-offs with that. But
going along that same route, a group of people in the media that's been just completely getting bashed right now are the Boogaloo Boys. Have you heard of them? Mm-mm. No. The media is portraying them as anarchists, as racists, as all these people. But part of their core tenets are the government has gotten too powerful after September 11th. And
it's a fair assessment.
Yeah. And a lot of them they're saying that there needs to be some sort of Boogaloo, which is Civil War 2.0, right? Mm. Saying that the government just needs to cut back on its power. Which, I mean, if it wasn't for Edward Snowden, we wouldn't know about all the spying that we're happening.
Exactly, yeah, with the NSA.
Yeah, so I think what you'll see is among the libertarian and the more right of right, not necessarily far right people, I think you'll see that they have a lot more in common with people that consider themselves leftists than the media would like you to believe. Because a lot of it just comes down to the government being shitty at what it does.
Yeah, they just want to control and moving more towards a communistic society like you see in China with social credits and ratings.
Yeah, I saw that Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, dude. So that is a real thing in China, and I just saw an article like a week ago that Visa said that they've been approached by the government about doing one for the United States.
Oh, screw that.
So I don't think it'll actually happen, or they'll run it in the dark.
And you know that's part of why every day that I hear more and more of these stories is the every day that I say we need more guns. Just at some point or another, I mean, I'm not calling for a revolution, right? But at some point or another, the government is too fat.
Yes, I agree. It's becoming a big fat cupcake. It's just way too heavy at the top.
Yeah, it's a lot of it also has to do with just these career politicians that are there for 50 years.
Yeah, term limits.
Term limit them out.
I think there should be an age limit as well.
I'm not going to disagree with that one.
There's a famous guy that I follow. His name's Eric Weinstein. I don't know if you're familiar with him. How he talks. Him and his brother Brett Weinstein. They talk about how the bureaucratic containment, I guess, of the education system. And he said 20 years ago, the average age of a university president was mid 50s. In the late 2010s, the average age of a university president is in the mid 70s.
Wow.
So it's literally the same people, or they're just passing it along to their friends. Yeah. And so the boomer generation, you guys need to give it up.
I mean, if you were in this boomer generation and you see what's going on, would you want to give it up though?
It's true though. Yeah, it's hard to put yourself in their shoes, even though I know a lot of people would like to, even though they're terrible people towards the people who are going to be on the planet in 20 years and not them necessarily. But if you're in a position of power, it could get to your head, man. It gets to people, even small. You see this happen on a smaller scale, just to like social media influencers, where they let the power get to their head when it's like you're just a girl who takes butt pictures on the internet.
Yeah.
Like,
in all honesty, and this might be controversial, but something that I think should be a tick mark, a check mark on if you want to run for public office and if you want to make public policy, I think you should at least have kids. Whether they're adopted or not, I don't care.
Really?
But I think you should have kids.
Well, why do you think this?
Because then you have an investment in the future.
There's the clicker. That's interesting.
Right.
It's not just a financial, you don't just have a financial mindset. You have kids that you want to live
in a better world, right?
Huh. That's interesting. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, and you know, some of these are just thoughts and ideas that will never get implemented. And some of them, I guess, I don't think, have we had a president that was childless?
I don't think so yet.
I don't think so.
I think it's just for PR purposes. I think that's what they say is like, you need to, like, you haven't seen a single president either.
Right.
So that's just something, I guess, because that's also an investment towards your significant other to living in a...
Right. Can you imagine a bachelor president?
With no kids.
Party every weekend?
Dude, honestly, I'll give it a try at this point. I think we're due for something. We just need to get a younger person in there. We need to get somebody who's technically literate, I think is one of my primary reasons for a leader in the future.
And you know what? Along the same line, if we have someone going into office when they're 35 years old, right? And let's say they take their full 2 terms, they still have a whole life ahead of them that they need to potentially deal with the consequences of what they did in office. If someone goes into office at 75 years old, I mean...
Yeah, once you get out, you're only here for a year or 2 more, or you die in office.
Or you die in office, right? Like, I don't like the idea of not having to face your own consequences once you get out.
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone realizes too at this point in time.
Yeah.
Very somber. I think...
Well, this has gone political and not fire.
Yeah, honestly, I knew it was going to happen though, just because anything with guns, it's so closely related, even though maybe it necessarily doesn't have to be. People just want to group it together just because it's controversy, and controversy likes to be contained within other controversy, and then build a giant boom in a bubble.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is in the libertarian, one of the mottos is, I just want a gay couple to be able to protect their pot farm with their AR-15s, or with their M16s, I should say. That's the thing. Like, I don't give a shit what you do. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, I couldn't care less.
It's the most noble reason for that.
Yeah.
I think we'll end that here. I always ask 2 questions before we go, 2 common questions. The year is 2030. Where do you see Full Conceal and Solvent Trap USA at?
So 2030, let's see, Full Conceal, I truly do believe, because it's such a different perspective on the gun market, I feel like it can be what Glock did to the industry with polymer guns. I feel like Full Conceal can do to the industry with folding guns. So I think there's a big potential for Full Conceal. In terms of solvent traps, this might sound stupid.
Hey, nothing stupid.
I hope that I'm legislated out of work because of the Hearing Protection Act. And the Hearing Protection Act is something that'll allow suppressors to be bought and sold like a firearm.
I like that. Yeah, protect everyone's hearings.
Yeah.
We definitely need it, especially everyone who goes to music festivals and raves and partying. That's already getting dismantled every second. I can tell you that I'm personally affected by it from all of my partying.
Oh, yeah.
Always wear earplugs. And last question is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Opportunity, especially coming from Los Angeles. I see Las Vegas as a place of opportunity. I don't really gamble. I don't party in my own backyard. Right. I've seen people that just get decimated because they gamble where they live. But if done right, the cost of living here is amazing. It's close to LA. It's got an international airport, which is about 30 minutes away from everywhere in town. Mm-hmm. And it's really, if done right, your opportunity here is endless.
It's so vast. The city is trying to, before COVID, the city was trying to break away from the just dependent on tourism.
Haas is moving to town. Haas is the largest manufacturer of CNCs.
Really?
Yeah, they're moving out of California and building a 1 million square foot warehouse and manufacturing facility in Henderson.
See, everyone sees the opportunity out here, and it's growing. And I could see maybe 20 or 30 years down the road where you just have multiple huge industries that aren't just based off tourism and hospitality.
Yeah, my dad moved from Israel to the U.S. In the mid 80s, and he moved originally to Los Angeles, and he last year moved to Vegas. And he's telling me that Las Vegas today feels like what Los Angeles felt in the mid 80s.
Yes, I hope that is very true, because I know that's been echoing through Vegas since my parents moved here in the mid 80s. They were like, this is going to be the next LA. So let's hope that it can, because we each have our own staple here, and it's only beneficiary to both of us, as well as everyone else that's listening who goes and can make their mark. Yeah. Do you have any final words, and where can everyone reach you?
So final words is, Full Conceal is right now, the parent corporation is going through a rebranding. So I'm sure we'll post that up as the link with the new website and all that. As for Solvent Trap USA, that's going to be live in about a month and a half. So in the website, it's going to be solventtrapusa.com. Okay. And you'll be able to get your stuff there.
Cool. What are your internet links if they want to link up with you personally or any of the brands?
Well, I mean, internet links are pretty easy.
Same.
It's just Leeor Engelstein. That's my personal name, and
cool.
Everything is as you saw when you friended me. I have to accept you.
Yeah, you have the same one. I'll be sure to. I always put everything in the show notes, so that'll be here. This was an awesome conversation. I actually learned a ton about weaponry and firearms.
And let's go shooting.
Yeah, one day soon. I actually don't think I've ever been to a gun range before, so I would love for that opportunity someday. Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.